World War II, beginning in 1939, plunged the world into a brutal conflict unlike any before. Fueled by Adolf Hitler's ambition, Nazi Germany swept across Europe with alarming speed, occupying nation after nation under the banner of the Third Reich. Poland fell first, followed by France, Belgium, the Netherlands, and beyond. For millions, occupation meant not just foreign rule, but a life under constant fear, oppressive laws, censorship, and violent crackdowns. Minority communities, especially Jews and Slavs, were singled out for persecution, deportation, and extermination in a campaign of terror that would come to define the Holocaust. Yet, in the shadows of tyranny, resistance began to grow. Brave individuals and underground networks fought back, risking everything for freedom. Among these courageous souls were young partisans, teenagers who defied one of history's darkest regimes. Their stories remind us that even in times of terror, hope and defiance can still rise. In the quiet hills of northwestern Bosnia, under the soft light of a winter sky, Lepa Radić was born on December 19, 1925, into a modest Bosnian Serb family. Her village, near Bosanska Gradiška, was far from the world's great cities. But even in this secluded corner of Yugoslavia, the echoes of political unrest rumbled in the distance. Lepa grew up surrounded by strong voices. Her family was deeply rooted in communist ideals, and her uncle, a known activist, filled their home with fiery debates about justice, freedom, and the future of their country. These conversations shaped her young mind early on, planting seeds of resistance that would one day bloom into fierce defiance. She was a quiet, sharp-eyed student, reserved but determined. At school, Lepa stood out not just for her intelligence, but for her seriousness. She devoured books far beyond her grade level and questioned authority with a quiet boldness. Her teachers noticed she wasn't like the other children. She was watching, thinking, preparing. At just 15, while others her age were preoccupied with chores or childhood games, Lepa joined the League of Communist Youth and the Communist Party of Yugoslavia. The world was at war, and she had already chosen her side. In a world increasingly swallowed by tyranny, Lepa Radić didn't stumble into resistance. She stepped into it with clarity and conviction. Long before she held a rifle, she had armed herself with ideas. In her small village, under the weight of a growing storm, a teenage girl was quietly becoming a symbol of something much greater. By the early 1940s, Europe was ablaze. Adolf Hitler's armies had stormed across the continent like an unstoppable wave, toppling governments and redrawing borders in days. Yet the Balkans remained a defiant, tangled patch on the Nazi map, one Hitler could not afford to ignore. Yugoslavia, nestled in the heart of the Balkans, tried to walk a tightrope of neutrality. But neutrality was a luxury Hitler wouldn't tolerate. In March 1941, the Yugoslav government, under pressure, reluctantly signed the Tripartite Pact, an alliance with the Axis powers. To the outside world, it looked like surrender. But inside the country, anger boiled over. Just 2 days later, the people rose up. A bloodless coup replaced the regime and placed a teenage King Peter II on the throne. It was a slap to Hitler's pride, and he never tolerated defiance. Furious, Hitler issued Führer Directive 25. On April 6, 1941, the skies over Yugoslavia darkened as German bombers roared overhead, launching a brutal invasion. In just 11 days, Yugoslavia crumbled. But what followed was even worse. The Nazis carved up the country, installing puppet regimes like the Ustaše in Croatia, fanatics who unleashed a reign of terror against Serbs, Jews, and Roma. Villages burned. Thousands were slaughtered. The promise of neutrality had turned to ash. Amid this chaos, something extraordinary began to stir. Resistance. From the deep forests and high mountains, partisans rose up. These were not seasoned soldiers, but farmers, students, and children. Among them was a teenage girl named Lepa Radić, watching the fall of her homeland, already resolved to stand and fight. The war in the Balkans wasn't just about land. It was a clash of ideologies, identities, and survival. And for Yugoslavia, the battle had just begun. When Yugoslavia fell under the crushing force of Nazi tanks in April 1941, its pieces were handed out like trophies. Among them, a sinister new puppet state was born, the independent state of Croatia. But what Hitler and Mussolini saw as a strategic victory became, for the people within, a nightmare painted in blood. The regime was handed to the Ustaše, a fascist ultranationalist group led by Ante Pavelić. To the world, they spoke of independence, but to those who lived under their rule, it was nothing short of calculated extermination. The Ustaše didn't just mirror Nazi ideology, they reveled in its cruelty. Their goal, a pure Croatian state, free of Serbs, Jews, and Roma. They promised a horrifying formula: kill 1/3, expel 1/3, and convert the rest. What followed defied humanity. Entire villages were wiped out, families torn apart, people butchered not with bullets, but with knives, axes, and even saws. Children weren't spared. In places like Jasenovac, a camp of horrors rivaling Auschwitz, the air was thick with the stench of death. Lepa Radić village wasn't immune. She witnessed friends disappear, neighbors silenced, and innocents slaughtered. This wasn't just war, it was genocide dressed in uniforms. But in the ashes of fear, resistance began to flicker. For people like Lepa, the enemy was no longer just foreign invaders. It was this homegrown terror. The Ustaše had hoped to scare the people into submission. Instead, they created martyrs, fighters, and a burning will to resist. The independent state of Croatia was built with Nazi support, but its foundation was cruelty. And its legacy would be written not by flags or borders, but by the bravery of those who stood up and said, "No more." As Yugoslavia burned under the boots of Nazi and Ustaše oppression, many chose silence, survival, and surrender. But others, braver, bolder, chose to fight. From deep in the forests and rugged mountains, the partisans emerged. A resistance forged not from military might, but from raw, desperate courage. Led by Josip Broz Tito, the partisans were a patchwork of farmers, factory workers, students, and ex-soldiers. What united them wasn't training, it was rage. Rage against tyranny, against mass graves and burned-out homes, against the sight of neighbors hung in village squares. Among them, one of the youngest was also one of the fiercest, Lepa Radić. Just 16 when she took up arms, Lepa didn't join the fight, she became it. After escaping a prison where she and her family were held for their political beliefs, she didn't flee into hiding. She joined the 7th Partisan Company of the 2nd Krajina Detachment. At first, she served as a nurse, tending to the wounded, but her quiet strength, her clarity of purpose, soon made her a leader. She recruited other youth to the cause. She gathered food under the noses of Nazi patrols. She carried the injured across dangerous terrain, guided only by courage and moonlight. But Lepa wasn't just a helper. She was a fighter. Rifle in hand, she stood beside men twice her age, her resolve unshaken. In every ambush, every mission, she proved what the partisans believed. The will to resist was stronger than the fear of death. The partisans weren't just a resistance, they were a rebellion of the human spirit. And in their ranks, Lepa Radić shone like a torch in the night. A teenage girl, defying the full weight of fascism, one bullet, one act of bravery at a time. Military operations, bravery in the blood and snow. By 1943, the partisan war effort was teetering on the edge of annihilation. Nazi divisions, reinforced by collaborators, launched Case White, a brutal campaign to crush the resistance. In its path stood mountain passes soaked with snow and blood. At the heart of this chaos was a 17-year-old girl named Lepa Radić. Lepa was no longer just a partisan, she was a symbol of survival. When the Battle of Neretva began, one of the largest confrontations between Axis forces and Yugoslav resistance, she didn't retreat. While bullets flew and artillery echoed through the valleys, she moved through the chaos not as a soldier with a weapon, but as a lifeline. Her mission, save the wounded. Again and again, she risked her life dragging injured fighters across freezing rivers, dodging shrapnel, and leading them to shelter hidden deep in the hills near Grmech. The partisan leader, Tito, had made one order clear: no wounded were to be left behind. Lepa made that command her calling. In one moment of daring, she led a grain harvesting mission near German encampments, armed only with resolve and silence. In another, she worked without sleep to evacuate the bleeding and broken from the front lines, knowing that Axis troops executed the wounded without mercy. But even Lepa's iron will had limits. During a mission to save over 100 women and children caught in crossfire, she was captured. Her rifle emptied, her breath heavy, she still stood tall, unbowed. Lepa wasn't just helping others survive. She was proving, with every step through gunfire, that courage doesn't need age or rank. In the freezing grip of war, she became the warmth of humanity and the fire of resistance. The capture, steel in her silence. February 1943. The forests near Germech were silent, blanketed in winter's stillness, until German boots shattered the calm. The 7th SS Volunteer Mountain Division, battle-hardened and ruthless, descended on the region like wolves. In the chaos, Lepa Radić, then just 17, was captured while trying to evacuate over 100 women and children from a village under threat. She had fought until her last bullet. Surrounded, outnumbered, and unarmed, she did not surrender. She resisted. It took a full detachment of SS soldiers to bring down a teenage girl. Even in defeat, she spat defiance. Taken to a Nazi prison in Bosanska Krupa, Lepa faced a fate worse than execution: silence. No name, no rank, no confession. The Nazis tortured her in isolation, starving her, beating her, demanding names of partisan leaders. But all they met was silence, and eyes that did not blink. Her captors were stunned. Here was a girl, bloodied, bruised, and shackled, who refused to break. She bore the agony with the kind of dignity that terrified men with power. Her resistance wasn't just in combat, it was in her refusal to betray. Days passed. The Nazis called her a bandit, but they knew they were witnessing something more dangerous: unshakable belief. Her strength echoed through the prison walls, unsettling even the guards. And when offered a final chance at life, freedom in exchange for names, Lepa replied, "I am not a traitor to my people. Those you seek will show themselves when you are all gone." The Nazis didn't just arrest a partisan, they had captured a symbol, and they realized too late. Some spirits cannot be caged. The execution, death could not silence her. February 8, 1943. The sky over Bosanska Krupa was gray, and the streets unnaturally quiet. Word had spread, the Germans were preparing an execution. Not of a man, not of a soldier, but of a 17-year-old girl. Lepa Radić, bound and bruised, was led through the town square. Her captors tried to parade her like a warning, but instead, people saw something else: a martyr in the making. The gallows was a crude thing, a rope slung over a tree branch, a wooden box beneath it. The Nazis wanted submission. What they got was defiance. Even with a noose around her neck, Lepa stood tall. When the SS officer offered her life in exchange for names of her fellow partisans, she didn't flinch. "I am not a traitor of my people," she declared, voice steady, eyes blazing. "Those you seek will reveal themselves when they have crushed you all." Then she turned to the crowd, her people, and shouted her final cry: "Long live the Communist Party! Long live the partisans! Fight, people, for your freedom! I will be killed, but others will avenge me." There was no fear in her voice, only fire. The officer hesitated. Then, with one swift kick, the box fell away. The rope snapped tight. And in that frozen moment, the Nazis thought they had silenced her. But they were wrong. Lepa Radić did not die that day. She rose. In the hearts of those who watched, she became more than a girl. She became a legend, a symbol of resistance. Proof that even in the face of a monstrous empire, one voice, one soul, could still shake the world. She was just 17, but her courage was eternal. Though Lepa Radić's life was brutally cut short at just 17, Her legacy blazes on like an unquenchable fire, a symbol of fearless resistance and unyielding hope against oppression. After the war, her extraordinary courage was honored by the newly formed Yugoslavian government, who posthumously awarded her the prestigious title of National Hero of Yugoslavia, a rare and sacred recognition reserved for those who showed the highest bravery and sacrifice. Lepa's story transcended her village and country, echoing across generations as a beacon of youthful defiance against one of history's darkest tyrannies. She became more than just a partisan fighter. She became a legend, inspiring countless young people to stand firm in the face of injustice and to fight for freedom no matter the cost. Her name is etched into monuments, schools, and streets, reminding everyone that even the smallest voice can roar loudest when fueled by conviction. Poems, songs, and stories keep her spirit alive, painting her as the fearless teenager who dared to challenge an empire of cruelty and never surrendered. But beyond official honors and memorials, Lepa's true legacy lies in the hearts of those who believe in courage, sacrifice, and the power of standing up for what is right. In a world still scarred by conflict and tyranny, her life calls to us, urging us to remember that bravery knows no age, and that one young girl's defiance can echo through history forever. Lepa Radić's memory is not just a chapter in a history book, it is a living flame, inspiring freedom fighters and dreamers worldwide to rise and resist.